Have you ever wondered what happens when ambition goes unchecked, when family ties unravel, and a kingdom is pushed to the brink of civil war? Today, we're diving into one of the most dramatic and heartbreaking stories of betrayal, ambition, and political maneuvering. The story of Absalom's rebellion against his own father, King David. This isn't just an ancient tale. It's a powerful lesson about leadership, loyalty, and the devastating consequences of unresolved family conflict. So, who was Absalom? Imagine the most charismatic person you can think of. The story tells us Absalom was praised throughout Israel for his stunning looks. From the top of his head to the soles of his feet, there was no blemish on him. But his appeal wasn't just skin deep. He had a magnetic personality and a charm that could win over anyone. He was a prince, the son of the king, and he knew exactly how to use his status and charisma to his advantage. But beneath this polished exterior, a deep-seated bitterness was festering. Years earlier, Absalom's sister Tamar had been brutally wronged by their half-brother Amnon. And what did King David do? He was angry, but he took no real action. He failed to deliver justice for his own daughter. This inaction from David planted a seed of resentment in Absalom's heart that would grow into a full-blown rebellion. For Absalom, this wasn't just a political move, it was personal. He felt his father had failed him, failed his sister, and failed the family. So, how did a disgruntled son manage to turn an entire nation against its beloved king? Absalom was a master of political strategy and public relations. He started by creating an image of power and authority. He got himself a chariot and horses, with 50 men to run ahead of him. A display that screamed future king. He was making a statement without saying a word, projecting an image of royalty that rivaled his father's. Every morning, he would go and stand by the road leading to the city gate. This was the ancient equivalent of the courthouse, the place where people came to seek justice from the king. When anyone came with a complaint, Absalom would intercept them. He'd listen intently to their story, showing great empathy. He'd say things like, "Look, your claims are valid and right, but there's no one from the king to hear you." He made people feel seen and heard in a way they felt David no longer did. And then came the hook. After validating their grievances, he'd add, "If only I were made judge in the land. Then everyone who has a dispute or case could come to me and I would give them justice." And when people approached to bow down to him, he wouldn't let them. Instead, he would reach out his hand, take hold of them, and kiss them. He presented himself not as a distant prince, but as a man of the people, their champion. The text says he stole the hearts of the men of Israel through calculated charm, personal connection, and promises of justice. He systematically undermined David's authority and built his own loyal following. For 4 years, Absalom played this game. He nurtured grievances, stoked dissatisfaction, and built a network of supporters across the kingdom. He sent secret messengers to all the tribes of Israel with a simple, coded instruction. As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then say, "Absalom is king in Hebron." He was building a shadow government right under David's nose. The final piece of his plan involved a brilliant act of deception. He went to King David and said, "Let me go to Hebron and fulfill a vow I made to the Lord." He cloaked his political rebellion in the language of spiritual devotion. David, perhaps wanting to believe the best of his son, gave him his blessing, but this was no spiritual pilgrimage. Hebron was David's original capital, a place of symbolic power. By declaring himself king there, Absalom was making a direct challenge to David's throne. The conspiracy was now out in the open, and it had gained terrifying momentum. The news came to David. The hearts of the men of Israel are with Absalom. Faced with this massive betrayal, how did David respond? This is where the story shifts and we see a completely different kind of leadership. David, the warrior king who had faced down Goliath, made a shocking decision. He chose not to fight, at least not in Jerusalem. He told his officials, "Come, we must flee, or none of us will escape from Absalom. We must leave immediately, or he will move quickly to overtake us and bring ruin on us and put the city to the sword." David's decision to flee Jerusalem was an incredible act of humility and wisdom. His primary concern wasn't his crown or his palace, it was his people. He wanted to spare the holy city of Jerusalem from becoming a bloody battlefield. As he and his loyal followers left the city, it was a heartbreaking scene. David walked barefoot, his head covered, weeping as he went. This wasn't just a strategic retreat. It was the painful exodus of a heartbroken father, betrayed by his own son. He was mourning the broken relationship and the brokenness of his kingdom. But even in this moment of crisis, David's faith and strategic mind were at work. He showed an incredible trust in God's sovereignty. When one of his men wanted to curse an enemy who was taunting David, David stopped him saying, "If he is cursing because the Lord said to him, 'Curse David,' who can ask, 'Why did you do that?' Leave him alone. Let him curse, for the Lord has told him to. It may be that the Lord will look upon my misery and restore to me his covenant blessing instead of his curse today." David saw God's hand even in his suffering, trusting that God's ultimate plan would prevail. At the same time, David was a brilliant strategist. He knew he couldn't just run and hide. He needed to undermine Absalom from within. So, he devised a counterintelligence plan. His loyal friend Hushai wanted to flee with him, but David sent him back to Jerusalem with a critical mission: pretend to join Absalom's side and act as a double agent. Hushai's job was to frustrate the counsel of Ahithophel, Absalom's chief advisor, who was known for his cunning strategies. This was a high-stakes move, relying on loyalty and wisdom to defeat brute force. David was fighting a war on two fronts, one of military strategy and another of political intrigue. This story forces us to compare two very different styles of leadership. On one hand, we have Absalom, whose leadership was built on charm, manipulation, and exploiting people's grievances for personal gain. He looked the part, he said all the right things, but his ambition was a destructive force that tore his family and his nation apart. His leadership was self-serving. On the other hand, we have David. He wasn't a perfect father or king. His inaction and failure to deal with justice within his own family created the very environment that allowed Absalom's bitterness to grow. The story doesn't let him off the hook for his failures. Yet, when faced with the ultimate crisis, his leadership was defined by humility, a deep care for his people, strategic wisdom, and an unwavering reliance on God. He was willing to give up his power to save lives, trusting that God would ultimately set things right. The rebellion of Absalom serves as a timeless and cautionary tale. It shows how personal grievances, when left unaddressed, can spiral into national catastrophes. It highlights the danger of leaders who use charm and flattery to mask treacherous motives, and it underscores the importance of discernment in seeing past appearances to recognize true character. But it also offers a profound lesson in resilience, demonstrating how faith, humility, and wisdom can guide a leader through the darkest of trials. It's a messy human story of failure, betrayal, and heartbreak, but also one of incredible faith and ultimate restoration. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think is the biggest lesson from this story? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into these powerful stories. See you next time, and God bless.